We are live on Proline TV, the Our Lads Football Network, and we are talking Big Ten football, the Oregon Ducks. And whenever we get an opportunity to talk about the Oregon Ducks, we have the privilege of introducing the editor at GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. Rob, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. I know it's a lot earlier in the morning out by you. You're obviously in the backyard of the program, so it's pretty early. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And this is going to be another exciting season for Oregon Ducks football following a big one last year. Of course, it ended disappointingly, but hey, it's a new season. The transfer portal makes things interesting. And we have a lot to discuss here to see if we can get everybody caught up on what to look forward to with Oregon Ducks football this season. And because one of the things I just noticed going over everything here, Rob, is the amount of just huge losses that the team has to replace. Not that they can't do that. That's what makes them a top program. But you're talking about a big-time quarterback, running back, 4 starters along the offensive line and in the secondary, their top 4 receivers, and 3 top draft picks along the defensive line. So that's a lot to replace.
It is. I mean, it just feels like kind of the new normal, though, in college sports. I mean, we're about to kick off a soccer season and a volleyball season with new head coaches, and they have almost completely new rosters because that's just in the age of the portal and everything else. Player movement is so easy now. It just feels like I say, the new normal. So obviously a lot of production that was lost, but then you're able to go out and get some really big names too, some really accomplished guys as well. So I mean, I think everybody's looking at the quarterback position certainly. After 3 years of Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel, how did things play out there? And that's a spot where the Ducks didn't go out and grab a guy in the portal this year. But there are definitely a lot of new faces. Definitely when practice started last week, I had my roster out and was the faces and all that. But like I said, it's just how things have been the last few years. And this is a program that's got a track record of being able to kind of plug and play with guys coming in through the portal. So obviously the goal will be to continue that trend.
Well, let's start first of all with the normal process of recruiting high school kids. And Oregon had another top class, according to Rivals and On3. They were 5th overall with 4 5-stars and 13 4-stars. And their biggest name that it looks like that we're going to get an opportunity to see this season is wide receiver 5-star DeCorian Moore.
Yeah, I think particularly with Evan Stewart, the top returning receiver being out with an injury, at least at the start of the season, the opportunity is even bigger for a guy like DeCorian Moore to come in and be an impact player. He is electric, no doubt about it. He and Dante Moore worked together quite a bit in the spring, and we're able to start develop some chemistry. And Austin Novosad and he have been on the same squad quite a bit as practices have started this preseason. So he's had a chance to develop some chemistry with the other guy that seems like he's really in the mix for the quarterback competition. So a guy who can kind of do it all. But there's a couple other names on there, guys that have been kind of waiting in the wings for their chances to shine. Gary Bryant, the first one that comes to mind, guy who's battled some injuries. He came in through the portal a couple years ago, battled some injuries, really wants to be a guy who has a big year this year and proves he can be a leader for this group vocally, but also in terms of production. So the Evan Stewart loss was not insignificant, and on the heels of Tez Johnson and losing Terrence Ferguson and Trayshawn Holden, a lot of guys who caught a lot of balls last year. But with Moore and Bryant and all the rest, there's certainly a lot of talent with the level this program has recruited at the last few years, particularly at receiver. So it's going to be exciting to watch those guys and see how they help fill the void there.
Do you think Moore will end up being like it looks like he's going to end up being like the major true freshman to get playing time. Do you see any other true freshman that might have a shot at significant playing time?
Offensively?
Or defensively, either way. We could start on offense, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know who put together that depth chart. I think you got Cooper Perry kind of buried there.
Okay.
He's a guy with a lot of ability and can catch the ball. And again, in a receiver group that's got some production to replace from last year, and so things should be particularly wide open there. It wouldn't be surprising to see. I think he's got the ability to play himself in the mix there. And then, I look at the running back group, and there's just a lot of really, really explosive guys. DeJuan Riggs, who goes by Dink, redshirted last year, but then a couple other guys came in. Davison and Hill have come in as freshmen this offseason and are really, really explosive backs. So that's another position where, you lose some production and you return some guys, including through the portal, in addition to the portal, that you think can help really replace that production. But, until somebody really proves that, they're the guy, the door's open for some other guys to prove themselves. And I think running back, one of those freshman running backs certainly could play themselves into the mix.
Okay. So, and obviously there's only a certain number we can put here on the board. We have 5, you can go 5 deep, but that's very important to know that you do believe that there are a couple of true freshman running backs that could definitely get in the mix. Okay. So you believe that means that you think Cooper Perry will have a pretty good chance to maybe, as far as all of these other freshmen besides Moore, to get into the mix. And where would you put him? Would you put him like in the backup, two deep, 3 deep?
I don't want to get into that, but I just think again that the door's open. Things are wide open there. So they haven't really designated a depth chart at all in practice so far. They're just kind of like they did in spring. They've tried to got the team kind of divided up evenly into yellow squads and a yellow squad and a green squad, and they kind of go head to head quite a bit. So certainly I'd expect as the first game week gets closer, that'll change, obviously. But, I think right now, again, and it makes sense with all the opportunity that exists, all the doors that are open there. Guys are split up evenly and given kind of an even shot to kind of play themselves into those rotations.
Absolutely. When you have this much turnover, it's not just those transfers. There's the freshmen. They could equal opportunity. How about on the defensive side? Any of these kids that you think we should be keeping an eye on as early as this season?
Yeah, I'd look at the corners probably. Again, a position where you suffered some losses, and it's the same story. You bring in some defensive backs that have played elsewhere. You've got some guys returning. Like Jalil Florence is coming off an injury, really wants to prove himself. Sione is a big, long kid who came in from junior college and wants to be a leader for this group. And so there's guys that, Ife Obidewu is a guy who really impressed as a redshirt last year. But again, Offord and Brew and Finney, they're just really talented kids. Finney's length is really, really impressive. More high-profile recruits, and again, at a position where you might want to play 3, 4, 5 guys in games, and you don't have 3, 4, 5 guys who played a ton last year. Certainly, the opportunity could exist for one of those guys to get into the mix.
All right, and then as far as transfers, let's talk about. We'll stick here on the defensive side, and Dylan Thieneman is the big name, of course, because he just exploded on the scene. In 2023, had that big year with the 6 interceptions and such, and not in production, dipped a little bit last year, but that was just a god awful team that he was on. So this is just a great opportunity for him now to go from Purdue to Oregon. Wow. What a difference. Also, Theron Johnson, quality starting corner for Northwestern. Even Kennedy had a ton of PDs last time out for Ole Miss. And Bear Alexander is coming over after a good 2023 at USC. Decided to cut things short early last year to redshirt and transfer to Oregon. So he's fresh starting in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, all those are positions where you lost a guy and you're looking for immediate help. I think Bear Alexander, particularly in the middle of that defensive line. I think some folks thought Oregon would probably do more to address, the interior defensive line through the portal. But I think in bringing in Alexander, but only Alexander, showed a lot of faith in Amari Washington, Tion Gray, Terrence Green, those guys, and Aiden Breland. That some of those young defensive tackles can really be impact guys. And when you're bracketed by Uiagalelei and Tuioti, who maybe the best pass rushing duo in the country, that they're going to command some attention. So that'll take a little bit of pressure off some of those guys. And then Betcher's a really proven guy behind them at inside linebacker. Devin Jackson's a really athletic guy who is a leader for this defense too. So they'll take some pressure off those D tackles, including Bear Alexander. But there's going to be some young guys there that have some opportunities, and the coaches showed a lot of faith in them this offseason by not bringing in more help through the portal in that spot. So it's going to be exciting to watch those guys.
Okay, and then on offense, 3 transfers looking here like they might be projected to start. As I mentioned, they lost significant starters last year along the line. So we might see those 3 starters there. Hughes coming over from Tulane was a very productive runner in the AAC, and then a couple others there on the depth chart. So the biggest story there with the transfers on offense is you get Hughes, who is an electrifying player, and now he's going to get to play for Oregon, and we know that'll just up his game. And then also having 3 new offensive linemen.
Yeah, Hughes getting, player of the year, preseason recognition, things like that. I'm going to be really excited to watch him in this offense, and because obviously what this offense has done under Will Stein, the numbers speak for themselves. The O-line guys are just really impressive. I mean, Isaiah World is just, when you lose a Josh Connerly, you feel like there's going to be a drop off, and to bring in World, wears the same number even, and just looks like a dude, is pretty impressive. And so, yeah, that group, I mean, that's a bunch of grown men along the front. They haven't played together, obviously. So that's going to be the key. How quickly can things come together? We watched this Oregon team last year against Idaho and Boise State really kind of spin its wheels a little bit early in the year. Do it and did so in victory, which that's you. If you can take lessons out of victories,
that's right.
Continue to improving. That's what you want. And so I think that speaks to the job the coaching staff did, kind of navigating the program through those first couple games, and not kind of overreacting to some less than perfect play. But you open against a Montana State. It could be a situation again where expectations are one thing, but this is a group that has a lot of gelling to do, particularly along that offensive line, and so things might not look perfect right out of the gate, but I would expect things to click relatively quickly, though, again, because it's a bunch of grown men. There's maturity there physically and mentally, tons of ability, and they're getting a ton of work together now. So a couple other, names in there, like, the Iulis and Kavika Rogers that have been around for a while that certainly are going to want to play themselves into the mix as well. But you look at that 5 as you have it there. I think a lot of people expect that to be the front 5. And if it were, again, just a ton of experience, albeit not together here at Oregon.
Okay. Now let's talk about the holdovers, and I definitely want to get your opinion on some potential breakout players from the holdovers. But we got to start at quarterback with Dante Moore. See, all I remember from watching Dante Moore was how much he was struggled at UCLA as a freshman. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise. He's a freshman. And that was not a great team he was on. But, I think maybe there was so much hype about him that you just expected more and you just didn't get it. Now he's on Oregon. He's been there. This will be his second season, first season as the starter. And this is where coaching comes in. No question about it, because the kid's got a world of talent. But again, any young player, you just don't know what you're going to get. What have you heard so far? And what do you think we should expect out of Dante Moore?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a really impressive physical specimen. I mean, I think he needed last year. He needed a chance to just sit back and take a mental reset, and I think it speaks to his maturity that he knew that, and he embraced the chance to just sit behind a Dylan Gabriel and keep himself ready in case he was needed, but to really kind of reset himself mentally and learn a new system and really kind of come into his own. I mean, the ball comes out of his arm so easy. It's just really impressive. And he's explosive as a runner when he needs to be. A little bit of quieter presence than, a Dylan Gabriel or a Bo Nix, what we've had at the position the last few years, but still a guy who commands respect. But Austin Novosad is a guy too who's waited his turn the last couple of years, and I think has really impressed in the times he's gotten some opportunities. Obviously like everywhere, that's a position you want competition, and I think that's the position that the coaching staff feels they've got. Worst case scenario for Novosad, a guy who is more than capable of pushing more and spelling more if the need arose, but pushing to the extent that he could maybe challenge there. I mean, it is still early in the preseason right now. I think a lot. You're far from the only one who expects Dante Moore to be the guy to take the first snap against Montana State. But Novosad's a guy who's really advanced relative to the experience he's gotten in games the last couple of years, and okay. So I think likes him. And then Luke Moak is a guy who really, really athletic, really explosive runner. Nobody around here wants to compare anybody to Marcus Mariota because he set the bar around here so high. But a guy who just is explosive as a runner. Moga is in that way, and really opened eyes in the spring game, and showed some potential to be a guy who can have an impact. Whether that's as a role player in a situational guy, or just a guy who continues to develop and tries to play himself into the mix for the position this year or in future years. I think he's a guy. There's a lot of excitement for down the road.
So you really do believe that there is a competition there between Novosad and Moore, and Novosad will have a chance. If he outplays Moore, he's going to get the start.
Do I believe that? Yeah, 100% potential. That if he outplayed 100%. Yeah, I do not think the job has been handed to Dante Moore since he got here, or since Dylan Gabriel left, or anything like that. No.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And this, I guess you, like me, you must feel really old when you see Achilles Smith Jr. there, fourth on the depth chart. So I don't know what kind of recruit he is, but we all remember, of course, what kind of quarterback his father was. So, yeah,
the first season, the first year I ever covered a game at Autzen Stadium was 1997. And Achilles Smith was a quarterback on the roster that year. The first full season I covered was 1998. Achilles Smith was the starting quarterback that year, and now his kid's on the roster. We've also got a kicker on the roster, Rocco Graziano, whose dad is a close friend of mine, and I've known the kid since he was like an infant. So, if the gray beard doesn't give me away, having kids of people I knew when they were here earlier, it certainly proves it. But yeah, Achilles Smith, just a really big, tall kid. His dad had a rocket arm, and he inherited those genes. So, like his dad was, kind of a raw talent, I think, with a really, really high ceiling as he arrives on campus. And so just kind of exciting to see how he develops this year and beyond.
Okay, let's get into the in the last few minutes we have, get into the top players to keep an eye on for the program outside of transfers and freshmen and all that. So who would, on offense, who are considered outside of the quarterback room, who are considered the leaders? A couple of guys that would be considered like the face of the offense regarding the veterans. And I know Sadiq's one of them. We talked about him. Matter of fact, you mentioned him because I'm going to ask you about breakout players too in a little bit. And
you got the scoop. You got the scoop on
we
him.
did. So I'm going to hold you to a new scoop in 2025. You did so good last year. But yeah, Sadiq's got to be one of those kids.
Yeah, no, he's one of the fun things I always joke about, working with college kids is just the wide range of kind of development, and sometimes you get kids who get to campus, are here for 4 or 5 years, and by the time they graduate, they're still kids. Sometimes you get kids who show up on campus and they're adults from the moment they get here, and that's Kenyon Sadiq, just a kid with a ton of maturity on and off the field. Obviously, if you see a photo or video of him physically, he's been built like a grown man since he got here, but a guy who just carries himself with a lot of poise and maturity. And so the fact that he has already been an impact guy, I think coaches are going to try to find a ton of ways to get him involved even more this year. Not a surprise, but Pancho Lalulu, the guy in the middle of that offensive line at center. You want a guy who's a vocal leader outside of the quarterback room. It's no question it's him. I mean, he and Dave Iuli a little bit too is another guy who has been on this offensive line and not afraid to raise his voice and say, hey, if things aren't going well in practice, or if guys need to sharpen up, or if the defense is getting better than the offense, you want a voice that's going to rise up and say, hey, this isn't it. We need to raise our game. It's those guys. And, this program's recent history at center is really good. Jackson Johnson winning the Remington a couple years ago. And Poncho's definitely kind of inheriting that mantle. I mean, he's a guy who is every bit the vocal leader of this offense. Again, even more so, guys like Moore and Novosad, one, by the nature of the fact that there's a little bit of uncertainty at that position over who's definitely going to be the guy. It's not like a starter has been designated there, but then they're also, neither one of them is, like a Bo Nix or a Dylan Gabriel vocally. They're a little more soft-spoken than those guys. So you'll like having a Pancho Lalulu who's willing to really be the guy who basically in any situation make his voice heard. And so I think he's invaluable to this offense in that regard.
And Winnington, he is the top holdover in the backfield. Been here for a few years, very productive. Are we going to see another gear, now that this is more of his opportunity, even though Hughes has come in? But are we going to see a different type of player in Winnington? And what kind of a player is he?
I mean, I think you want him to be what he's been, which is just a great change of pace guy. He suffered a pretty significant injury. I think it was 2 years ago now, to his knee, and has made it back. And a guy who's a really hard worker, a really soft-spoken guy, really hard worker. Really versatile, can return kicks, could return punts if you needed him to, can catch the ball. But kind of has a little bit of that classic like NFL like third down back to him, where he can catch the ball, where he's really elusive. And can kind of change the pace from your workhorse. But he can be that guy too if you needed him to. But so yeah, he presents a little bit of a different look in that backfield because Hughes and Lamar and Harris and even some of the freshmen are big kids, and Whittington's a big, well-built kid too. But he's kind of got that scat back to him, that style. So he can really change the pace up and present a different look for this offense.
Okay, on defense. So you kind of alluded to it already. Those edge rushers. That's where this defense is going to start, isn't it?
Yeah, those guys are elite. Tuioti and Uiagalelei are proven commodities at this point. I think Blake Purchase is a guy who has shown flashes that he can play himself up into that realm with those guys, and if nothing else, be a very, very solid rotation guy behind them. Elijah Rushing's a former 5-star recruit there, so I think this program has just recruited at a different level the last few years. Particularly at some specific positions that I think they've identified. You look at those young corners, you look at the young receiver group, and then you look at the recruiting that's been done at the edge positions. The last 2-3 years under Dan Lanning, it's just been a different level than it had been around here before that. Mario Cristobal kind of famously changed the profile of recruit Oregon would pursue on the offensive line and to some extent the defensive line. And that's under Dan Lanning. There's been other positions kind of added to that mix, and edge is one of them. And so you see the guys that have come in at those positions. And then, I think I'll be looking for some of those young D tackles. I mean, Amari Washington has all the physical ability in the world.
Okay.
If he can kind of lock into what they expect of him and what he needs to do play in, play out, he could be a really, really high impact guy on the middle of the D line.
And Betcher, would he also be a pretty big part of this defense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a proven guy. He's on all the, preseason awards watch lists for defensive players. I mean, just a guy who, Eugene kid, came in as a walk-on, first got to campus as a baseball player, got drafted by the Astros a couple years ago, but just loves playing football for the Ducks. That's what he grew up wanting to do. So, I think I look at him as kind of like a guy like Justin Herbert a few years ago, like, getting people identifying them as pro prospects, but really all they ever saw themselves from young kids was as guys who wanted to play for the Ducks, and now they're living out their dream. So, Betcher's, great kid, great leader. He's a guy who plays 1,000,000 miles an hour, but what's changed is, a couple of years ago, he was going 1,000,000 miles an hour in one direction, and if the play went the other direction, he wasn't going to be involved. But he's been able to kind of rein that in a little bit and kind of play within himself, play within the system a little bit better, but still cut it loose. And he's as physical as it gets, and a guy who can really set the tone in the middle of that defense.
And who would be considered the top defensive back coming back for the team? We talked about the transfers and the freshmen, but is there one potential standout there that's above the rest, or are they kind of, all in the same?
I mean, I think there's a lot of guys who really, want and need to prove themselves back there. I mean, Florence is a guy who's maybe played the most snaps. I mean, I'm not looking at snap counts, or I don't have that in front of me, but a guy who played quite a bit, missed last year, and I think want to prove so he can get back to being a guy who is really productive and can be kind of a leader for this group. But yeah, I mean, the opportunities abound for a lot of guys, and Obade was a guy who, really, I think, impressed last year. And Laulea, again, Sione, again, a JC guy a couple years ago, really big, long corner. He's trying to prove himself as a leader this year. If he can win himself a prime role on the defense, I think that only enhances his credentials as a leader. And so, he seems to be maturing quite a bit, so that helps. And then you've got those freshmen pushing them all too. So I don't think anybody can can get real comfortable with their position in the secondary. Obviously, those transfers, are proven guys who played a lot of football, and bring them in hoping and expecting that they're going to be able to win prominent roles. But the other guys, I mean, it's a dogfight, and it's fun to watch and practice.
All right, now let's wrap up the roster here with the breakout players for 2025. We'll start on defense. Give me a couple of players here that you think might be ready to break out as far as holdovers from last year.
Well, again, I think Amari Washington's a guy. The door's really open for him to after losing Jamari Caldwell and Derek Harmon. You bring in a Barrett Alexander, but the door's really open for kind of that next high impact guy on the middle of the defensive line to break out. And if you saw Bruce Feldman's freaks list that came out the other day, I think he was number 4 on the freaks list, because he's just his size and athleticism combination is just really, really rare. So I think he's a guy who the potential's there, and you just hope he grabs it and runs with it, because the sky's really the limit. Kingston Lope is a guy who was pressed into action late last year. When Oregon had to face a bigger receiver, they gave him some opportunities back there, and he looked like he could hold his own. I think the opportunities can be there for him to maybe impact this defense a little bit. And then Obade was, I mentioned his name a couple times, so I may as well keep rolling with that. I think if there's a guy, at corner that, hasn't really played much that could really impact that rotation, he could be that.
Okay, that's offense. That's defense. Now let's go to your breakout players on offense.
Yeah, I mean, DeCorian Moore, you started with him, and I think he's a guy who looks like he could be a leader production wise for this receiver group. But Jeremiah McClellan's a guy who came in with some accolades as well, and again, with the losses at that position, there's an opportunity there, and he's certainly got the talent to be a guy who impacts that depth chart as well. Justice Lowe is a guy who wasn't as much of a big time recruit as some other guys, but just as a guy who makes plays and just shows up every day and is a consistent presence in the rotation. And I think he's a guy who, he might not be as flashy as some of the other guys, but he's a guy who you could look up at the end of the season, look at the receiving numbers and be like, oh, I didn't necessarily realize he was like a top 5 producer at receiver this year, but
okay,
sure, he was just kind of there, game in, game out producing. I think he could have a year like that. And then again, some of those young running backs, whether it's Jordan Davison or Dier Hill or Dink Riggs, even though there are, some older guys and some more proven guys in the running back rotation, I think the opportunity is going to be there for one or more of those young backs to try to impact that rotation and potentially assert themselves.
Okay, so as usual, a great job once again, Rob. I really appreciate it. This is normally the time where I talk about win totals and championship odds, but I'll do that myself. I don't expect you to do that. I know.
Appreciate that.
Yes. So in the meantime, I look forward to getting the opportunity, of course, to talk to you during the season again if we can do that. And I know you are a really busy man, so I really appreciate you taking the time to doing this.
Hey, well, you were flexible with my schedule this morning, made a last-minute change, so I appreciate that as well, and look forward to next time.
Thanks, Rob.
Awesome.
All right, that is Rob Mosley. And again, Rob is the man as far as the editor at GoDucks.com. We have links in the description of this video that you can check out to go right there to the website. How do you follow Rob? And the best as far as not just football, but all sorts of athletics going on at Oregon. Okay. Yeah. So normally Rob's one of the rare guests that I am not going to force him to give me any predictions on win totals or anything like that since he works for the school. So I'm going to do it myself. And so I'm going to pop up on the screen here. Let's take a look. Let me get this into, let's see. Yeah, let me get this in first. We'll take a look first at, let me pop this up here on the screen. We'll take a look first at the conference numbers for Oregon. And there you can see right there, they are about 3-1 right now to win the Big Ten. So that's the third choice. And honestly, look, Oregon is just going to be one of these teams, and there's a lot of them now. We're in this era, as we just mentioned, as Rob said, the transfer era, where you're going to lose so much talent. And you normally in the past, when you lose as much talent as Oregon has, that there's just no way that they're going to be able to compete this year anywhere close to the way that they were last year. It's still going to be hard, though. There's just no question about it. It's still going to be hard. Doesn't mean you can't do it. And the key is going to be Dante Moore or Novosad. I mean, if they can develop one of those young quarterbacks right away and they come out and all of a sudden you realize that in 2 years they're going to be a first-round draft pick, then this team will definitely have and has enough talent to be a playoff team and to maybe do a little bit more damage than you saw last year. Sometimes that works that way too. You think you've got the really big-time veteran team this year, and this is our year. The next year, you've got all these young guys, new guys, and the expectations aren't as high. And then, boom, all of a sudden, you find yourself in the semifinals or the championship game of the college football championship game. All right, so there you go. As far as the Big Ten, though, look, Ohio State's in the same boat as Oregon, same boat. So I think I don't think we have any idea what to expect from both these teams. I think just because of who they are, We expect them to be there, and maybe they will. But they both have young, unproven quarterbacks, so we really don't know. That's why Penn State really should be the favorite in the Big Ten. And they've got not only a quarterback that could be the first overall pick of the draft, they have the two big running backs returning. They're now even better at receiver. Their offensive line is returning. So they haven't really needed, except for receiver, they really haven't needed to bring in all this influx of relying on freshmen or transfers. And this was a team that was right there at the end, semifinals, that close to a championship. So I think it would be very disappointing. And I don't know if I could see it. I don't know if I can see, James Franklin would have a lot to answer for if he can't get Penn State to the national championship game this year. Then you've got a Michigan team that struggled big time on offense. It's all up to their freshman quarterback, Bryce Underwood. They're going to be better than people think. But maybe this is just a sign right there that they're the fourth choice, that, you know what, keep an eye on Michigan. And by the way, I will be talking with Anthony Broom, speaking of Michigan, later on tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern. We get an opportunity to find out what's going on with the Wolverines. So I'm looking forward to that. As you can see right there behind my shoulder. You probably see the other one behind my shoulder there, not on the small screen. But yeah, I have a little bit of a alliance difference, but that's because I'm a New Jersey native who grew up a Michigan fan. All right, so there you go. As far as any potential sleepers in the Big Ten, Illinois is going to be strong. So they're going to be good. USC, they've got talent, but man, I don't know. I really don't. I kind of think USC's best chance might be if that young kid actually takes over at quarterback instead of Maeva, because I don't know if Maeva has another gear. I just don't. And if he doesn't have another gear, I just don't know if USC does anything special. Iowa, they've got a better offense. We know that. I even think their defense is better. So I think they'll be a better team this year. But it's Iowa. They just don't have any big-time skill position players. So I think it's very difficult to compete with the big boys. Indiana, they've got that same schedule. It's the same thing. I mean, they've got good players at every level. They're going to win a lot of games because they've got good players at every level, but they don't have a lot of great players. They do have on each position on defense. They do have a good top guy, but for the most part, especially on offense, there's just no guys. There's just no players where you go, wow. We're in trouble here. This is a guy that we have to really, especially when they do step up like they did last year and play some of the top teams. I just don't think that's it's going to change. I really don't. Nebraska should be better. We know that. I think next year is the year, though, Nebraska is going to compete for the championship of this conference. Not this year, but this year, take the next step, especially at quarterback. We know they've got one of the better young quarterbacks in the conference. Washington is going to be a lot better than last year. They have a stud young quarterback. Their offense is going to be dynamic. Jonah Coleman knows how to run. So this offense is going to be as good as any offense in the Big Ten in my mind. It's the defense I'm a little bit concerned with, but they are going to be good. Okay, they're not going to be where they were a couple of years ago, but they are going to be a lot better than last year. Minnesota is going to take a step down. They lost their quarterback, who was a nice pickup from the FCS, Brosmer. But they have a good running game, and they're good coaching staff, Fleck. So they're going to be fine. But I don't think they'll be as dangerous as last year. Michigan State would be a lot better. Absolutely. Michigan State will be a lot better. Once again, you're relying on a young quarterback to take that next step in Childs, but that's what you need to see happen if you're a Michigan State fan. That's why he's there. That's what the excitement is about the kid. They've got a world-class receiver as well, and the kid Marsh. So, yes, Michigan State is going to be a better team. Jonathan Smith knows what he's doing, but still another year or two away. Maybe by time Childs is in his final year, a couple of years from now, unless he just explodes this year, I'm not sure that's going to happen. Then maybe that's a team to keep an eye on. And then, you get into the recruiting classes and so forth. And I still think Michigan State's a few years away. I think Wisconsin's in a lot of trouble. I think this might be it for the staff. And it's very disappointing. You didn't expect it. I think there was a lot of excitement there with Fickle coming in. But it was a terrible decision to decide that we're going to start throwing the ball all over the place. That's what Nebraska did. And look how long it's taken Nebraska to kind of get back going again. And that's what Wisconsin tried. And just stick with what works. This is the Big Ten. Okay. You're not, I'm sorry. I know that there's a lot of teams out there nowadays that chuck the ball and want to play air raid, but you can't do that at Wisconsin. Why would you even think of doing it at Wisconsin? When I see that their best offensive lineman is a transfer from Central Michigan or something like that. And I'm not saying the kid's not a good player, but Wisconsin needs to bring in transfer offensive linemen from Central Michigan, Wisconsin. So, I mean, that's when you know they got problems. I think that might be it for Fickle. Look, I know they've had injury problems at quarterback. I get that, but it hasn't been good. UCLA is going to have a down year just because they just lost too many key players, and they were that close from being really relevant. They won some big games at the end of the season. They really got hot. They got such a bad start. Took too long for them to get going. But as soon as they clicked, they really became a dangerous team. You just couldn't finish the deal against USC, and that's the one that killed them. And then, of course, they lose Gabers, and that's going to be, I think, a significant loss, at least for this year. And Schlesinger at linebacker, that stud edge rusher. So Rutgers, my hometown team, will be a lot better. Now, the question is the schedule. They have one of the tougher schedules in the conference. That's the only thing that will prevent them. There's two things that will prevent Rutgers from not going bowling: the schedule and injuries. And I will say this: if they do not have the rash of injuries they had last year on defense, and even the running back, Manungai, got banged up a little bit towards the end, as long as they are relatively healthy, I'm not talking about they need to be squeaky clean healthy, just not a rash of injuries, they're going to be a lot better than people think. That offense came on really strong last year. They've got the best quarterback that they've had there in a long time. They can go 3 deep as far as electrifying talent at receiver. This is the best offense they've had there without question since Greg Schiano was there the first time. So, and the defense is going to be fine. Yes, they lost some key players, but overall, this is going to be a good football team this year. They're going to be competitive, and I think this is the year that they are going to break through and win a big game. I don't know who it is, and it could just be Iowa. Could be. I don't know if I'm going to go crazy and say Ohio State or Penn State, but I think they're going to win that next big game in their maturation. And maybe it is Iowa. Maybe that's the team they have to beat in order to do that, because that is a home game early in the season. Northwestern's going to be better, especially if Preston Stone delivers. I mean, since when has Northwestern had a Preston Stone at quarterback? So, look, Braun has done an excellent job there. Very underrated coach. So they're going to be better. They did not have a good year last year, but still, they're competitive. They can, especially as a dog, love them as a dog. I mean, I think they have won 9 games under Braun as a dog in the 2 years. I mean, that's incredible. So watch out for Northwestern. They're going to win a couple more, 2, 3, 4 more as dogs this year. So I'll pick them. I know that. Hopefully I'll pick them at the right time. Maryland, they're going to go back to a freshman. And look, who knows if this kid is going to deliver. Anybody's guess. There's so many other young quarterbacks in this conference that I think have a better shot to deliver. But if the kid, produces as a true freshman, then okay, then Maryland, maybe they could be a bowl team. But they're just, I don't know. Loxley's good for the program because he can recruit, and if you recruit in that area, you can be competitive like he has been. But they're not winning any championships with Loxley, so that's what Maryland has got to say to themselves: do we want to bring in a coach at some point and have bigger aspirations, or are we just satisfied by having a coach that is a real good recruiter and that will go to bowls just about every year? Well, that's up to them. And Purdue, Odom, look, nice story at UNLV. I hope he turns it around at Purdue, but it ain't happening this season. Okay, so that is the Big Ten, and I just want to wrap up here with Oregon's numbers. They are the 7th choice at 12-1 right now for the championship. And they are also, as far as the Big Ten overall, I think, what are they? They are the 3rd choice, as I mentioned before. Oh, and the win total, I don't know where it is on here. It might take me too long to find it because they don't do it in alphabetical order, unfortunately, here. I don't know why, but they don't. But here's the win total, 10.5. That's pretty high. Taking a look at the schedule for Oregon. Let's pop it up. Let's move it in. Okay, so for the schedule for Oregon, we've got right there early on. You shouldn't see any trouble, but you do have two programs, and I say three. All three of those teams, Oklahoma State, Northwestern, and Oregon State, are going to be better than last year. Okay, there's that. And remember, as Rob said, it did take him a little bit. Even FCS opponent last year was a little bit too tight, and that was a veteran team. So watch out. Now, I'm not talking about Montana State, mind you, but just, keep an eye on Oklahoma State, Northwestern, and rival Oregon State, because the Oregon State game, interesting enough, is just before the Penn State game on the road. That's kind of surprising. I don't know. Maybe Oregon State will use that to their advantage psychologically. Like, hey, I don't think enough of us. They're just going to play us just before they got to go play Penn State. But I'd watch out for one of these three games, and especially Northwestern, because this one is away on the road. So I would watch out for one of those games to be closer than people think. But there you go. They should be undefeated when they play Penn State. It's on the road. I think Penn State will beat Oregon just because, as I said, I just think Penn State's in a much better position with their team. They're basically a better version of when they were last year when these two teams faced off in the Big Ten championship game. I mean, obviously, you lose your big edge rusher, top 5 draft pick edge rusher in Carter. We get that. But again, it's like Oregon lost like 10 of those guys. Okay. Indiana, I don't think that'll be a problem. But again, when you're at home or you're in a situation like Oregon is and you've got a young quarterback, I do think there'll be other games, whether it's Indiana at home, Rutgers on the road. I don't know about Wisconsin, Iowa on the road, that one of those games, I think they might be, it's going to be a close game. Let's just put it that way. One of those games, maybe two of them, will be closer than you would expect. Question is, will they be able to come up with the big plays at the big time? And that's where we talk about the young quarterbacks, whether or not they can take that next step. USC, we have no idea how good USC will be by the time they play here. I think there's a chance for USC to be a lot better. Well, we'll know by then. Washington, as I said, on the road, that one will be dangerous. And that wraps it up. So really taking a look at the schedule, avoiding Ohio State is big. So even if they lose to Penn State, so here's the deal when you're 10.5. You can't lose 2 games. So let's just give Oregon the loss to Penn State, all right? Because they're going to be an underdog. So let's say they lose. They're going to be a favorite in every other game, okay? But they have to run the table and cannot lose another game. So I can't do that. I can't do Oregon over 10.5, 11 wins. I just can't. I'm looking at Oregon as more of a 9-win team. So not even 10, but I think they're a 9-win team this year. That doesn't mean that they can't get to the playoffs. I think a lot is going to depend. I think I will say this, if they win 9 games, I don't think they will be in the playoffs. I think they have to win 10 games to be in the playoffs with this schedule. Okay, unless 3 or 4 of the teams on the schedule are a lot better than people think in the preseason, and so their games will be that much bigger, and it will a tough schedule, okay. But because it doesn't look like a tough schedule early on, I can't imagine if they are a 9-win team that they would make it to the postseason. I think there's just too much talent out there, especially this year in the SEC. And I'm not an SEC guy, obviously. I still think at the top of the Big Ten can compete right up at the top of the SEC. Mano a mano, I still think so. But overall, the SEC is just a lot better this year, depth-wise. I mean, I think you can go all the way down. I think you can go 12, 13 deep of teams that can, if everything went right, could be a playoff team. That's how deep the SEC is this year. You can't say that about the Big Ten this year. It's just a fact. And again, a lot of it is going to depend on Oregon and Ohio State more than anything, is whether or not, with all of the losses that those two programs have endured, can the transfers, and especially those young quarterbacks, can they come in and just develop right away? And what about Underwood in Michigan, if he develops right away? So, because he's a true freshman. Okay, so Moore and Sagan, they've had a tiny bit of a time, but Underwood's coming fresh in. So, but he's starting for a reason. I know he hasn't been given the starting job yet, but I think everybody would be surprised, and it would be a big disappointment if he didn't start. I know they got the kid Keen from Fresno State as a backup, a veteran backup with a ton of experience, but Michigan does not want to go that route. If they go that route, that means Underwood is not developed as planned. And I just think that would be a big, not like last year disaster, because the quarterback situation, it was just so bad. It was really, I've never seen anything like it. And yet they still found a way to beat Ohio State and beat Alabama in a bowl game. And that was with what? Davis Warren, a walk-on. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up for our Oregon coverage. Thanks a lot for tuning in and letting us educate you, because I was educated. That's why I love having Rob on. He gets me up to speed and everything what's going on at Oregon. He just talked about a ton of players that you need to keep an eye on. And especially if you're not out there and you don't follow the team as religiously as he does, because he has to. Even fans out there, I know it's a different season with all the turnover. You want to just kind of either refresh yourself or just, hey, yeah, I didn't realize that these guys were the next wave of players I need to keep an eye on. And that's why it's great to have Rob on. Okay, so anyway, I look forward to having Rob on during the season, especially, who knows, maybe we'll get him on before the Penn State game. That might be pretty cool. And coming up tonight, we have our Michigan talk. So check back tonight if you want to hear what we have to say about that, another Big Ten team. We are going to have our college football prediction show tomorrow at 1:00 on the Playbook ATS podcast with all of our top industry handicapping experts, Mark Lawrence, Andy Iskoe, Jim Feist. I will be there. Actually, Jim Feist, I don't know if Jim will be there. College football isn't his thing, so he may not be there. But a week from Thursday, Jim will be there. Victor King will be there. He's the totals guy. There ain't no better totals handicapper in the industry than Victor King. And then we start our weekly NFL previews on that Thursday show, every Thursday at 1:00. Now, I believe tomorrow's show has been rescheduled to 3:00 now that I'm thinking about it. So we're going to actually be on a little bit later at 3:00 tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. But it's normally 1:00 on Thursdays. I do a show every Friday at 4:00, a football show, NFL, college football. Mark Lawrence and Jim Feist will be joining me soon on that show within the next couple of weeks. And we are going to run that every Friday, 4:00, all the way through the season, football season. We'll be talking about NFL and college football every week. And I've got so many things to talk about each week on that show. We'll also be doing all sorts of other programs during football season. We'll have a show on Mondays, recapping the weekend in football. We'll have a show in the middle of the week. And then that's just for me. And then, of course, we get the Thursday show I just mentioned that Mark will be hosting. Jim will have his shows. So subscribe here to ProLine TV. Check us out. And we've got some of the best handicappers in the business, not just about handicapping, but just overall, just these types of discussions, having the opportunity to just talk and educate myself and hopefully you too about college and NFL. And that's something also you need to check out if you have an NFL team that you really like. You want to know whether or not we've already interviewed our specific contact, check it out. If it's not there in the library, trust me, we'll get to it. So I plan on completing 32 NFL interviews before the season begins. Still have a long way to go because we're still only in the first week of August. So thank goodness I've got a good month to wrap up all of those interviews. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in here. And don't forget to subscribe, like the video. All that stuff is really the best way to contribute and support the channel. And again, thanks to Rob Mosley at GoDucks.com. And we'll see everybody